So the file that you are looking for, it is in week number 10. It's called Shirt Dark version 2. That's the one I want to start with. So in Photoshop, I want to turn this thing white. How do I do that?
The shirt or the background?
The shirt. I want to make the shirt white. So I had a really smart-ass student in this class one time, and they said, oh, just invert it. And indeed, that does make it white, but it makes a negative. It was I actually thought it was funny. But anyway, this is a negative of it. This is not what I was asking to do, so I'm going to undo that part. So most of you guys would try to attack this probably using hue saturation or something like that, some sort of curve, whatever. All of those would be wrong. So I'm going to show you how to the way you actually do it, and then we're also going to look at colorizing. But first, I know I gave you guys those Pantone color books. I don't think we installed them yet, did we? I don't think we have, so I want to do that right now. If you go back to our very first class, class number 1, this is the ultimate gift I'm giving you. So, who in here knows what Pantone is? What is it? Kennedy? It is a company, and they're the authority, at least in the United States, the authority on color. So everything in the United States, from an industrial point of view, would be labeled in Pantone color. So you would actually, clothes are labeled in Pantone colors. Inks, printing inks are all Pantone colors. Paints are done in Pantone color. Now you can go to like Home Depot and they'll have their own little color swatch book. They do not use Pantone color, but people who are actually trying to then match when you're communicating color, I used to get this all the time. People would send me, they'll say, okay, I want a Pantone 137C. And I have a book of Pantone colors, and I would go to Home Depot and try to match to the closest color I could, or get them to actually scan it. But the thing about Pantone color books is that there are, there's probably 20 of them, and every single one of those books is like $500 or $600. So to get an entire Pantone set, and they're only good for a year, supposedly, is in the thousands and thousands of dollars. Anyway, Photoshop forever supported Pantone color until 2021, and then they removed support for it. So, but you guys should know me well enough by now to know that that was not going to stop me. I actually had the 2021 version of Photoshop, and I yanked all the Pantone color books out of it, and I've given them to you, and you are going to plug them into your current version of Photoshop. Wow, isn't that a nice thing, Versa? Yes, that really is a sweet thing. Thank you so much for doing that. So to get to it, go to our class number 1, our very first class. Inside the class, inside your student folders, there is a software installers folder. Click on that. Inside of that, there is a Pantone color books folder. If you click that open, up at the very top is it's a Word document that will tell you actually how to install these things. So if you look at it, the very first step is how you would actually locate the Pantone files if I didn't give them to you. You can leave off step number 1 because I gave them to you. You can leave off step number 2 because I've given that to you as well. You can actually then copy this. Actually, I take it back. Step number 2 is where we're going to start. So for the Macintosh people, if you take a look at this, in the application folder inside the Adobe Photoshop, and again, the reason it's 20XX, it's whatever number of Photoshop you're working on. Inside of that, there's another folder that says presets, and inside that is another folder that says color books. That's where you want to copy these 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 files you want to copy into that folder. So I'm going to do this with everybody. So hang on one second. So again, if we go, now this is only Macintosh people. We'll get to the Windows people in just a second. So for the Macintosh people, you want to get to your application folder. Inside your application folder, you're going to find the Adobe Photoshop. In my case, I'm going to put it in 2026. I've got 2025 and I got a beta, but I do my work in 2026. When you upgrade your Photoshop, sometimes it'll bring the presets with it, but if it doesn't, you just need to do it again when you upgrade. Anyway, inside that Adobe Photoshop folder, there's a presets folder. Click on that. Inside that presets folder is a color books folder. You want to copy those files into this. So don't do it yet. So if you look through here, you'll see I've already made my copy in here. But what you want to do is you want to be able to see this folder in one window, and then you want to see the books, the Pantone colors, in another window. Click on the first one, hold down your Shift key, click on the last one, drag it over into the color books, but before you let go, hold down the Option key and you'll get a little plus. If you don't hold down the Option key, it will move them out of this software installers and put it in the right place, but then you won't have this stuff to install later on in a different version of Photoshop. So again, you want to hold down your Option key to copy them into that folder. And then you want to actually start restart Photoshop.
And you said put it in the color book?
Color books folder.
While holding shift?
No, while holding Option. Do you get a little green plus when you hold Option?
Let's see. Yes.
Yeah, that's what you're looking for. Okay, for the Windows people, again, in that same thing, and then same install Photoshop legacy part, what you want to do here for the Windows people, and it's probably easiest for you to just do a search for this. However, it is going to be in your C drive in the Program Files folder in another folder called Adobe. Inside of that will be Adobe Photoshop. And again, it'll be 2026 or 2025, whatever one you want. In that one, it also has a presets folder, and then inside of that, a color books folder. And you want to do the same thing. You want to drag those 12 Pantone files. You want to copy them into that color books folder, and then restart Photoshop. Say what? Oh, and if like in this case, this computer is locked, we can't actually change things or copy in here. Don't worry about this on this. And guys, we're still going to be able to do our whole exercise if you don't have these Pantone colors in your portfolio. We'll use other ones. Photoshop didn't get rid of all of their color libraries, just the Pantone ones. But I wanted to give those back to you. So again, when you get back to your home computer, or you get your computer back or whatever, you want to do this on your home computer. You don't care about doing it for this exercise. Okay, so is everybody restarted? Okie dokie. So the first move that we need to make on this is that, and we talked about this, if you remember the red car, the very first class that we had, how I actually changed the car from red to green. And everybody was like, wow, how did that happen? And the way it happened, and the way it happened so quickly was that I converted my RGB image into an LAB image. So remember, in LAB, color and luminosity are divorced from one another. In RGB, they are inextricably tied to one another. So the first move that we make when you do any serious color work is that you do it in LAB. You do not do it in RGB. No one would ever consider doing it in RGB, not serious work anyway. So to do that, you're going to come up to the image menu, down to mode, down to LAB color. So again, look at my screen, image menu, mode, LAB color. And when you do that, you'll notice up in the very top the title of your image where it said RGB/8. That meant it used to be an RGB image in 8-bit. This is now an LAB image in 8-bit. And now if you look at your channels over here, you will see that your composite channel at the top is LAB, but then you have a lightness channel, which is all of your luminosity, and then you have an A channel and a B channel, which is your color. A channel is the axis that goes from magenta to green. B axis is the color axis that goes from blue to yellow. So is everybody square about that part? Do we need to look at the LAB color space again really quickly? That is as non-committal as it gets. Don't worry, I wouldn't offer that up if I couldn't get to it really quickly. This is the LAB color space. So again, in the very center down here is neutral. As you start to move out to the sides, your color saturates. We have one axis right here, this red-green, again, other people will call it magenta green, is the A axis. This blue, the B axis is the blue-yellow one. You'll also notice, though, that the yellow one is a positive value and the blue one is a negative value. Instead of using the scale of 0 to 255, 0 is at the very middle in here. And then to go out in the yellow, it is a plus 127. And to go to the blue, it's a minus 128. It still gives you the same 256 tones of tone and of color. But anyway, that's what that is. And then white is up at the very top, and then black is at the very bottom. So black, this runs on a scale of 0 to 100. So that's what we just put this space into. And what you can see is this allows us to deal with color and never affect brightness or luminosity. That's the trick. So back into Photoshop. So to do this, I follow a recipe. I have given you guys the recipe. If you actually take a look back in our folder where we previously were, oh, come on. Right here, it's this PDF right here, recoloring fabric. That fabric is a little bit misleading though, because this trick will work on recoloring anything. Hair, bricks, skies, clouds, teeth, skin, doesn't matter what you're recoloring, it all works the same. All right, so anyway, back into here. So I'm just gonna read right off of my recipe for doing this. So we've opened this up. Our first thing was to convert it. We actually did that part. Our next thing to do is that we don't want to recolor the buttons or the labels. Those we actually want to keep. So I've created a mask here that actually does, also don't want to change the color of the background. So if you take a look at the mask, all it's doing is it's just isolated the fabric. So I've already built that for you to save us time in all of this. And so here we actually go. So my first move in here is I'm going to create a brand new group out of this. So come over to your layers panel, click on the very bottom. There's a icon that looks a little bit like a folder, a manila folder. Click on that. It'll add something called new group, and you're going to double click on that and call it white shirt. Then we're going to make a duplicate of our background layer, Command J, select it and just copy it. And then you need to drag this into that group. So if you do, Photoshop is making this more difficult to see all the time. But if you get it right in the right spot, you will see a blue border going all the way around the group. If you don't, if you're below it like I am right now and you only see the blue line on the bottom, it's not going into the group. You need to get that line going all the way around the group and let go. You'll also see that it shifts slightly over to the right. That's an indication that it is in the group. If you collapse the group, it'll disappear, so you know for certain it is in the group. Then I'm going to come back to this layer that's actually inside of my group, select it, and then we need to remove all of the color. This is so when you're recoloring, you always want to start from a grayscale. You don't want to start with color. So it's much, much easier. If let's say I've got a red shirt and I want to make it green. I could do that, but the easiest way to do it is to remove all of the green color first and then recolor the shirt red. It's much simpler to do than it is to actually try to shift one complementary color into another. So regardless, you would do all your recoloring like this is to strip the color out to begin with. So to do that, with this background copy is selected, come up to the image menu, down to adjustments, down to desaturate. So again, you do not want to use an adjustment layer for this. You want to do, this is destructive, but that's, I've got a copy of it, a version is sitting down at the very bottom, so I'm not worried about that. So anyway, image menu, down to adjustments, down to desaturate. And you won't see a real marked shift in this because there really was very little, if any, color in this sky to begin with. But at least now I know that that's true. I'm going to double click on this thing now, and I'm going to rename it DSAT1.
Where did you go to desaturate?
Up to the image menu, down to adjustments, down to desaturate at the bottom. Good?
Yeah.
Okay. You're going to make 2 copies of this. Command J, and you're going to rename them DSAT. I want to rename the second one that I made DSAT2, and I want to name the very top one DSAT3. Then turn off DSAT1 and DSAT2 and select DSAT3. Now at this stage of the game, we want to put a layer mask. We want to actually mask this thing out. Now I could actually copy this layer mask that the channel that I'm going to use as the mask. I could copy it and apply it to every one of these layers, but there's no point in doing that. You just apply it to the group. So come over to your channels palette, hover over the thing that says shirt. Do not select the channel, just hover over the thumbnail, hold down your command key or control if you're on Windows, click the thumbnail, it loads it as a selection, and then come over and click on the group. So again, the folder at the very top that says white shirt, click on that, and then you're going to add a layer mask. You can do masks on groups, and now every single thing that is in this group will be masked. Are we good on this?
Can you repeat? You said hover over the map.
Hover over the thumbnail of the shirt, hold down your command key, and click. Did you get marching ants?
Yeah.
Then come back over to your group that's called white shirt, select it, and then add a layer mask. And it should look like mine.
Yeah.
We good? This way, because we're going to change the color of this, we won't change anything. We won't change the color of the buttons, the label, or the background. That's why we're doing this. Okay, come back down to DSAT1 and select it to make it active. DSAT2 and 3's eyeballs should both be turned off. And we're going to add a solid color adjustment layer to this, to right above it. So in your layers palette, at the very bottom, the circle that's half black and half white, click on it. And we are going to say, I want to add a solid color. And the solid color that I want you to add, we're going to do it in RGB values. So select your R value and type in 245. Hit the tab key for your green value, 245, and tab key again for your blue value, 245. And it gives us basically a very light gray. And say OK to that. And then finally, with this set to OK, we need to change the blending mode of this from normal down to hard light. And when you do that, it starts to begin to look something like a white shirt. However, it's very, very low in contrast. Jesus Christ. Oh, the screen's not down. I'm like looking at this thinking, wow, that is just ugly. Better? Okay, so what we're lacking in this right now is contrast. So to do that, to fix that, click on the eyeball to turn DSAT2 on, select it, and then change its blending mode from normal down to overlay. And you can see it starts to bring in contrast for us. It starts to pump it up a little bit more. Now, I frankly don't think it's enough in here. That's what DSAT3 is all about. So click on the eyeball for DSAT3, turn it, select it, make it active, and also change it now down to overlay. So now this is starting to become like a really, like, you know, I'm picking up, I mean, you can actually see the texture in the fabric and all of that part. I've got a lot of contrast in here. If you feel like it's too much contrast, simply drop the opacity of your DSAT 3. You can dial this in any way that you want to make it feel like that. However, I would say that this is a, am I going to look at this and say, is this a white shirt? Yes, likelihood I am. However, we could push this just a little bit harder. If you think about, again, when we talk about doing exposure using a gray card, what is the value of white that we actually, the range that we want that white patch to be? Where is it? 245 to 250, or not 255, but 250, right? So, and the reason is that at 245 and 250, we still keep detail. So we actually can push this a little harder. Go back down to your solid color adjustment layer, double click on it, and change these values from 245 to 250. That's about as hard as we're going to be able to hit this, but, and again, tab key to go to the next one, 250. Tab key to go to the next one, 250. And say okay to that. I'm going to go back because I've pulled the opacity of my third DSAT layer down. I'm going to bring it back up again. And that is a fucking white shirt that you just made out of a black shirt. Yes.
So, like, has there been instances when they're asking you, like, they give you one shirt to shoot and, like, give you the Pantone numbers with all these other colors?
That's exactly where we're going next. So here's the thing about doing this. I'm going to do it. I'm going to show it to you first, and then we'll talk about the reason that you might want to consider this. Okay. So you can collapse this group now. So just click on the little triangle next to the group to collapse it. And then we are going to duplicate this group. So just hit Command J to duplicate the group. I'm not going to change the name right now to white copy because we're going to actually look at the Pantone color we want, because you would name your layers with the Pantone colors. So to get to this, I'll go ahead and open it up. And when you open it up, we are going to double click again on your solid color adjustment layer. And when that opens up, the color picker opens up, you'll notice right above the LAB readouts, there's a thing that says color libraries. Click on that. When you do click on that, you will get a drop-down menu up at the very top. So this full code tone is by default what shows up without in the new version of this. But if you click on this, you should actually see the Pantone colors that you just loaded. Does everybody have them? Thank you very much, Verser. You just gave me $5,000 worth of software.
Is this right?
Yeah,
Oh.
that's exactly what you're looking for.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so we need to look at the color, the Pantone libraries that are in here really quickly. So if you take a look at this, the two that you are going to see forever are the two at the very top, the coated and uncoated, both the solid and coated and uncoated. This is what most people, those are the two books that everyone has and the ones that most people refer to. The CMYK coated and uncoated ones are really primarily used for printers. You won't see them that much. And then you get into all these weird things like bridge colors, metallic colors, pastels and neons. All of these are really very specific, but you'll notice that they all have coated and uncoated versions of this. That has to do with the stock of paper that they are printed on. So in a coated stock, there's actually a coating that sits on the paper. You guys work on with a lot of that stuff. The inkjet papers that most of you guys use are they're coated. The matte papers are not. They can be, but they don't have to be. But at any rate, it makes a difference. So the name will actually include either a U or a C in there, U for uncoated, C for coated. In most of all the fashion work that I've done, and doing set design, all that kind of stuff, I'm always getting coded numbers. So if you click on the Pantone Solid Coated, it'll open up and you'll see there's a whole tree of color right here. You can go through all of this. And you're thinking to yourself, well, how the fuck do I get to, they're gonna give me this color and I gotta go through this whole tree one at a time? You do not. We are actually going to, I'm going to pick a color right out of this group that I just picked. And the color that I'm going to pick is 529C. So I'm actually going to write that down on that piece of paper. this is definitely a place where you want to keep this paperwork handy. So it's, what did I just say, a 529? Yeah, the 529C. It's a kind of a lilac-y color. So if you guys simply, with the Pantone coded, solid coded library picked, just really quickly type in 529. And it should take you right here. Look, I'll watch. Here, I'm going to go someplace completely different and then just type in 529. And it takes me right to that color. So you do not have to hunt and peck for this stuff. Make sense? Okay, you're actually going to then select the 529. There's a whole group of colors in there. There's 7 in there. Make sure that you pick that one. And then up at the very top, you will actually see in your color picker, there is an LAB readout. You need to copy this value down. So for my 529C, I've got an L of 72, I've got an A of 22, and I've got a B of a negative 25. That negative 25 matters. That is not a dash. That matters. Again, our scales here are not 0 to 255. Our scales are a positive 127 to a negative 128. So that part matters. And then go ahead and say OK to this. So this is now the color that we've actually got in here. You need to turn off both of your DSET 1 and DSET 2 layers. We don't need the contrast on this. If we feel like we need the contrast, we'll dial it back in. But first, we need to make sure that we actually got that real color. We're close, but we may not be exactly there. So to get at that, you actually need to come over and get your color sampler tool. So again, it's the eyedropper that has the, it's in the eyedropper group, the color sampler tool. This is what we use to leave color sampler points on our image so that we can do our whatever adjustments we need to make. So color sampler tool, and then just drop a color sampler point right in the middle of that shirt. Again, you want to avoid shadows and you want to avoid highlights. You want just the general version of this. And then if you take a look at your menu right here, you'll see that you're getting an LAB readout. We need to actually have the numbers that we picked match, because right now they don't. So to get them to match, we are going to add a curve on top of this solid color layer. So simply come over and click and add just a regular curve like you guys have done 1,000 times before. But now you'll notice in the curve properties panel, you do not have an RGB with an RGB drop out down. You've got a lightness group, an A group, and a B group. In the lightness group, click on that, grab the targeting adjustment tool. That's the hand that's right next to it that has the arrow pointing up and down. Click on that hand, come over to the spot that you have on the shirt where the color sampler tool is, and you're going to click and start to drag up. And you are watching the readout for the L channel in our info palette up at the very top. You want to drag it up till it reads 72. Then in my A channel, click on the A channel drop down, click on that same point. My A is reading 21. You want it to be 22. So click on it and bring it up just slightly to get to 22. And then the B channel is fine. This is now the color of that shirt. Close up the group. Double click on white shirt copy, and you're going to call this a Pantone 529C. So this is the story that I tell everybody. So I get a client who, God, somebody's got to calibrate these monitors, these projectors. That just doesn't look anything close to what it should look like. Anyway, it should look pretty good on your all screen, no? Yeah, but you haven't done your color correction. Oh, yeah, that's it. Yep. Anyway, all right, so imagine this scenario. Somebody approaches me and says, I've got 100 shirts in, everyone is a unique color, and I want you to photograph that. Will you do that? And I'll go, sure. Matter of fact, hold this thought. I'm going to pause this video because you would hear it, but you won't see it. So. So clever to begin with, because there is no scale in this. There is nothing in here. The only thing that's in here that you could really, there's no color matching in here. There's none of that. The only thing in here really is the lighting. And how did she do? So what you should know is there are 2 files that I gave you as possibilities, right? One of them was side lit. One of them was a top flat light, right? What's the lighting on this background? Turn the figure off and you tell me. That is not a side light. That is a flat light, right? So it's the wrong girl. However, the fix to this is, I would just change the girl. That would be the easiest part. But you could also modify the background on this, which is what we're going to try to do. She's also put a drop shadow in here. Is that drop shadow correct? Say what?
For the side light, yes, but not if you're doing.
It's actually even for the front light, it's even not correct on that. That would actually be more behind her. This is a drop shadow that's off to the side. It's actually done with a layer style. You can see it's right here. This is what it is. So, but no, if you actually take a look at the shadow that's on her legs that is being cast, the shadow for her comes out way to the side. It does not go onto the background. So just to start off with. But again, I'm going to leave the shadow off of this altogether because I'm not going to change this on her. It's a relatively dark background. I would probably fix the shadow a little bit, but that's not the real way I'm going to attack this. Instead, I'm going to change the lighting on the background. So to do that, come down to select the background. We're going to do this right above the background. That's where we're going to deal with this. So I am going to add simply a curve on top of this. And in the curve, I'm going to change its blending mode from normal down to multiply. And you can see it makes things considerably darker. Then I'm going to grab the gradient tool, the G key. Once you hit the G key up in the very options bar at the very top, you have 2 types of gradient, either the normal gradient or the classic. I'm going to ask you to please pick the classic gradient. Then in the drop-down sample box of type of gradient just to the right, click on that, open up the basic gradient group, and select the very first one, foreground to background color. And then finally, in the types of gradient, the 5 little icons that are at the top, you want a linear gradient. That's the one that's all the way to the left. Then finally, hit the D key to make sure your background and foreground colors are defaulted, black and white. And then we're going to pull the gradient. We're working on the layer mask of this curve. So simply start on the left-hand side, click and drag to the right-hand side, and then hold down your shift key because it'll keep your gradient line that you're pulling perfectly horizontal, and let go. And so this is now given me a gradient on my background, but it's the exact opposite of what I should have on here because, again, she's lighter on the left-hand side, this is on the other. So simply invert your gradient. So with the gradient mask done, just Command-I. And now this is the beginning of the illusion of this. However, she's really bright in this. I don't think it's actually strong enough in this. So I'm going to hit this a second time. But I don't want to make the background darker. I just want to make the other side lighter. So I'm going to just make a copy of this curve, Command-J. You'll see it makes it more extreme. That's not what I'm really looking for here. I'm going to change the blending mode of this now from multiply to screen. And then finally, I'm going to invert this layer mask as well. What screen does is it'll make things lighter. So Command-I to invert that. And now I've just doubled these up. So this is what the multiply one did by itself, and then I'm doing the screen on the other side. And you can now see that I've relit the background, and don't you feel like, to see the difference, come over and click on the on your history panel at the very bottom, click on the little camera. Go ahead and just leave it named Snapshot 1. We're not going to stay here long. Go up to the very top. Click on the very top history state. This is what it looked like to begin with, and this is where we are right now. Which do you believe? Say what? Yeah. Again, this shit has got to match. All right, you can close that up. I told you that was going to be the easy one. You do not need to save that one. I want to look at Eli's next. It is the next easiest one. Again, very clever in choice, I thought. So, first things first. Is this girl scaled right? Do we know? This is how you find out. Our first move in here is we need to really open up this staircase because there's shadows on this staircase that could be confusing me, and I just want to make sure I'm not confused in this. So, Eli, did you have a raw filter? Is this mine? Did you have a camera raw filter on your smart object staircase? Okay, no, that's great. If you'll double click on her camera raw staircase and just grab the exposure and take it up like 3.5, 4 stops. And then just say okay to that. It'll make things very, very bright. Matter of fact, I'm gonna open it up. I'm gonna go 4 full stop open. And say okay. So then I can zoom in to where her feet are on this staircase, and right here I can see the, again, that's not a shadow. This is there's what they call risers in staircases. That's what this thing is right here, the back panel right here. I'm going to put 2 guidelines on those. So again, if your rulers are not showing, come up to your view menu, come down to rulers, make sure they are showing. I'm going to grab a ruler at the top and pull it down to the top of the stair ledge right there. And then I'm going to grab another one and bring it down to where the tread of the one that she's standing on hits the background. So this would be the height of a stair. Does that make sense? Okay. In your ruler, I need you to hold down your control key and click on your ruler, and I want you to make sure that you are measuring in pixels. I don't want you measuring in inches, centimeters, nothing else. Pixels is the finite measure that you want to use to do this work. So go ahead and click on pixels. And then you're going to grab your ruler. The ruler tool is in the same tool group as the eyedropper tool. So click on the eyedropper tool, and it's the one that's right in the middle. It's the ruler tool. I want you to click on that, and then I want you to come over to the top guideline, click, and then drag down to the bottom guideline. Also hold down your shift key to make sure that it is a perfectly vertical or a perfectly horizontal measurement. And then just make a note of the measurement and you can see, if you look in your info palette, this is 188 pixels. So that distance right there is 188 pixels. I actually write that down on a piece of paper. So hang on one second. And then I need everybody to go out to a browser really quickly. And in your browser, you're going to do a search for what is the standard height of a stair riser in the USA. And hit return. And it says the standard riser in the United States right here, standard residential risers, a maximum height of 7 3/4 inches. So it's not going to be taller than that. I'm going to put down 7 3/4 as my standard height. So now, if you take a look back at our image, you can say to yourself, okay, 188 pixels equals 7 3/4 inches. Does that make sense what we're doing here? Again, I measured it. I looked up how tall should that really be in the real world. These are public buildings. The code on this stuff is, trust me, you go measure any step, Go out in the hallway, measure one right now. It's going to be 7 3/4 inches, trust me. Make sense? So 7 3/4 inches equals 188 pixels. Don't get too worried about the math part right now. So now, how tall is the girl in real life? Well, I actually know this girl. She's 5'10", but again, professional model, it's going to be that 5'9" to 5'11", maybe 6 foot, 5'10". So 5'10" is, again, if I'm off by an inch, it's not going to be the end of the world. But I'm going to say 5'10". However, she's also in 3-inch heels. So how tall does that make her? That makes her 6'1" to the top of her head, not the top of her hair, the top of her head. At 6'1", how many inches is that? 73. So the girl is 73 inches tall. So what I'm going to show you right now is how you figure out how many pixels that actually is. So I'm just going to do something here really quickly. You don't need to do this with me. I'm just creating a blank whiteboard, something to write on. And of course, my system does not want to recognize my tablet. Even though it says it is. All right, well, don't laugh at my drawing right now because I got to do this with my trackpad. Okay, so I said, come on. I said 188 pixels equals 7.75 inches. I put the inches over one another. The girl is 73 inches. And what I need to know is, what is that in pixels? So to do this, you do what they call cross multiplying. You take this 73 and you multiply it times 188, and then you divide it by 7.75. So it is 73. So again, they call it cross multiplying because we are crossing, times 188 divided by the third variable, 7 3/4. So if we go to my calculator and we do that equation, we have 188 times 7.3 divided by 7.75 equals. So the girl itself, she needs to be, I did that right, yep, that's right. The girl needs to be 1,770 pixels tall. So then back in Photoshop, I've already got the mark on the floor where it actually needs to be for the base of her. This other mark I want to get rid of. I'm going to double click on my hand to kick back out. If you hit the V key to get the move tool, you can actually grab a guideline, and sorry, that did not grab a guideline. You can hover over the guideline and you should get that double-headed arrow, and you can drag it back up to the ruler. The ruler on the outside. I do still have my ruler selected. I'm going to start at the bottom and click and drag up, and I'm looking at my readout, and my readout, I need it to be 1,770. So I'm just looking for 1,770. Hold on my shift key to do it. 1,770. Oh, come on. Fine, 77, close enough. Drag a new guideline down on top of that. That is how tall that girl should be. She's too big. This girl's now 6'5", not 6'1". So to fix that, you go to the girl, select her, zoom in, hit Command T to bring up the transform dialog box. With the transform dialog box, click on the link between width and height. Drag your anchor point down to the bottom of her feet so that her feet stay in place. I only want to bring her head down. I don't want to bring her head down and her feet up, which is what happens if the anchor point stays in the middle. And then simply grab your scrubby slider over the H and drag her down until she's actually the top of her head, not her hair, but the top of her head is actually there. And then say, okay. She has now been scaled to this image. This shit matters. Go back now to the camera raw filter for the background, double click on it, and zero the exposure out, because the exposure was fine. I was just doing it so I could see where if there was a shadow on the stairs, where that all was. So I'm gonna go ahead and say okay to this. My guidelines, I don't need this part anymore, so I can get rid of them. Come up to the view menu, come down to guides, and clear your guides. I can just hit the V key to get the move tool to get rid of the ruler, and then take a look at this image. What do you guys think about this image? Is this done correctly? I actually think this thing fits pretty well. And the reason I think it fits pretty well is you can see there's a light source that's right up here in the top left-hand corner that would explain what's actually happening on her face. However, I actually believe that it's not light enough on her face. If you run your check layers, and I will see, I don't see them right here, so we're going to go ahead and run them. Select the very, very top layer of this of the composite, the one that says hand. Go to your actions palette, click on check layers, and run them. It'll actually do some really weird shit to your image. Turn off the color check layer part and turn on your luminosity check layer and say, does this fit? Now in this case, it doesn't change things dramatically because this has already been converted to black and white. So we're not really seeing a big change in here. But I'm going to show you the way that I would think I would deal with this to give me what I think is a more believable image here. Although I did think it was really well done. I told you that in your comments, Eli. So again, so what I would do here is I think that the light on her face needs to be a little bit hotter. I see this as that kind of overhead lighty situation. So I'm going to come down to, she has a camera raw filter for the figure. Double click on that camera raw filter for the figure. And you can pop the exposure. I'm going to bring mine up a half a stop and see what I think it looks like. And I'm going to say okay to that. That actually feels a little bit better to me. I like the way this is actually working here. What I don't like is how it's happening also on her body. I want to keep that part off of her body. The problem I've got here, though, is that this is where Eli actually, she used this camera raw filter to actually do this work. So you can see in here, it's actually, is there anything going on in that camera raw filter?
Converted it to black and white. I could have just put a filter.
Yeah, no, but that's happening in your camera raw filter. Is that's where it's being converted, is in that, right? Yeah, okay, so that complicates things for us. So I'm going to show you another trick. Open that back up again, because this is where she's actually set it to black and white. Get rid of that half stop exposure and say, okay, because I'm going to use the smart filter mask on this to control where the brightness happens, and it will also control the black and white. I don't want to do that, but you can hit it with a second version of the camera raw filter. So simply go up, filter, down to camera raw, it'll open up and hit it an extra half stop and say, okay. So this part's actually working well for her face, but it did this all for the whole outfit here. I don't want this whole outfit here to be done like that. So I'm going to hopefully go, no, my tablet is not going to be working today. So at any rate, I am going to go to the B key to get just a regular brush. I'm going to select the smart filter. Fuck me, I can't do this that way. Yeah, don't worry. I'm going to throw away both of her smart filters. We're going to convert this to black and white another way because I need to get at that camera raw filter. So I'm just going to come up to the very top of this. She's got a curve on here that's actually making the, as adding contrast to the left side, which, I mean, the right side, which I want. And I'm just going to then add a black and white adjustment layer on the top of that. And so that's actually given me my black and white adjustment layer. And I really hate the way that that part has actually worked. What else have you got going on in here? Anyway, then I'm going to go back to the figure, and I'm actually going to hit the figure harder. So again, add a camera raw filter to it. Push it up a half a stop, say okay. And then again, this part up here is working, but it's opening up the skirt down here too much. So I can work right on the layer mask for that, hit the B key to get a brush, make it a larger brush, and then change the flow of this brush down to like a 4 or 5%, something like that. Make black your foreground color. Make sure it is a soft brush. And then I'm just going to get rid of this part on this layer mask down in here. I'm going to bump this up considerably more to just have it happen a little bit quicker. So I'm not really getting the fall off here that I want. So I'm going to go to my next trick in this. I'm going to come up on top of my curves. So these are all curves that have been clipped to the girl to actually control her. So I'm going to do one last one in here. I'm going to just simply add a curve. I'm going to clip it to the girl, to everyone else. So hover your cursor between the two layers. Hold down your Option key and click to clip it. Change its blending mode to multiply. And you can see it makes things very, very, very dark. Then I'm going to invert this mask so I can control where I'm going to make the dark part of it. So again, Command I will invert it. And then I want the darkness to actually show. So this is a great trick for making gradients happen. I'm going to make sure my brush is completely soft. Then I'm going to make my brush large enough that the center of my brush will be at the bottom of her feet and that the top of the brush will be right under her bust line. Like that. So right now, when I click on this, it is going to give me a gradient from her feet all the way up to right under her chest. So I'm going to, again, take my flow all the way back up, make sure that white is my foreground color, put the center mark of my brush right at her feet, and click once. Now, that actually darkened it up. If you feel like it's still too light, it's not dark enough, just duplicate that layer, Command J. So down here in the bottom, I feel like it's actually way too strong down here at the bottom, so I'm going to drop the opacity of this. Oh, it needs to clip against the whole thing. This is not being clipped as well. So again, Option, clip it, make sure that it still is multiply, and then just use the opacity to back this thing off. But you see how it's become more spotted now? Isn't that how that overhead bare bulb would actually be? So again, I'm going to go to my history palette, do a snapshot of that, say okay, and then come up to the very top and say, well, which do we like? Scaled correctly, but relit. Make sense? All right. we've got one last one to do. It's to be the most complicated, but we can also all get through it. If you haven't done any of these yet, and most of you haven't, please do this one because this is a good one. So it's Sierras. It'll be the easiest, well, not the easiest, but it's the one that involves all the tricks that we actually need to do in all of this. So hang on one second. Okay, and there's a guideline in here. I'm going to get rid of it, just up the view menu, down to guides, and clear the guides. So what is right about this image and what's wrong? Just taking a look at it.
I think the shadow's too far in front of her when it should be more to
Yeah, if you take a look at the real shadows that are in the real space, right? The shadow coming off of this column or whatever this is sitting right here, whatever, all of that stuff is going right to left. Nothing is actually coming forward. Is there a light anywhere right behind her that would actually be causing this shadow? No, right? So those parts are wrong. Other things that I think are that we can scale in here, we're going to try all of this out. So I'm going to ask everybody to do this to start with. I want you to get rid of every single layer that's in here except for the background layer and the figure. So I'm going to click on the shadows. There's a gradient in here. I'm going to get rid of all of those. And then there's nothing up above the top, so we don't need to worry about that. Now this bottom layer actually is a smart object. That's great. It actually holds raw data, which is also great. The composite used to be a smart object. It's not one anymore, so that's kind of a problem that I've got with this. So I'm going to ask you to go grab the original smart object again. So again, if we go to, it was in session number 9. If you go into session number 9, again in the assignment folder, it was composite number 1. If you can open that up into Photoshop right now, we're just going to start with the correct thing. Jesus Christ. And I'm going to drag this figure now. Again, just drag it is a smart object. Just drag the figure from the layer onto the garage background. Hold down your shift key and let go, and it will say target has got a different bit depth, blah, 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 blah. This is actually a 16-bit image, and it's also in ProPhoto, which is fine. That's what it would actually have to be in all of this. But I'm going to change this into, again, if you're working in ProPhoto, it has to be in 16-bit. I'm going to change this now so that we can actually have those bit depths match, and that this also will be faster. So to do that, the first thing we need to do is convert this image from ProPhoto to Adobe RGB. So to do that, come up to the Edit menu, down to Convert to Profile. This is going to open up. It will already put in that ProPhoto RGB is the profile because that's the source space. It's already baked in. You're going to use the drop-down menu and say, I want a destination space of Adobe RGB, and then say, OK. It's going to say, do you want to rasterize this? I'm going to say, no, I do not want to rasterize this. It's a smart object. And then a lot of times it'll warn you, do you want to flatten this? You don't want to flatten it either. So now this is in Adobe RGB, a much smaller space. We don't need to be in 16-bit, so we are going to change that as well. Image menu, down to mode down to 8-bit. Now when we actually grab our other image, it will drag over just fine. Click and pull it over. Again, the layer, pull it over on top of the garage, hold down the shift key and let go, and it brings that actually into space. Now, I am going to get rid of the composite body one, the original one that was actually in there. We don't need to worry about it. It's wrong anyway. So I'll show you what it means when we go back. Come on, Jesus.
Can you convert the ProPhoto profile again?
What? Oh, it's locked. Sorry.
Were we supposed to convert her to RGB or the background?
The background. Here, we'll go through it all again. Nope, that's all right. That's all right. So do this with me now. Okay. So this Sierra's original image, it's in ProPhoto. You can see down here at the very bottom, if you click on the bottom left-hand corner, you can pick to show you any information. You should have this set to document profile so that you know when you fuck this up or not. So this is in ProPhoto, 16-bit, which is fine. I just don't want to keep working in that. But now I'm getting the feeling that it's going to be easier. Instead of changing all of this, we're going to actually just change the girl up here to 16-bit. We'll make her 16-bit also in ProPhoto. So to do that, so select the girl now, just the girl. Come up to the Edit menu, down to Convert to Profile. It will say it's in Adobe RGB. You're going to change this drop-down menu and say, give it to me in ProPhoto RGB. Is everybody here?
Not yet. I'm just trying to get the photo in
Yeah, I
Photoshop.
got that and it got stuck with the other girls.
Okay, let's just take a deep breath.
No, I haven't.
What do you guys have open or not? Okay, does everybody have the garage open?
Yeah.
Okay, does everybody have the copy of the girl open?
Yeah.
Close the girl up. We're not going to use her. I'm just going to use the original girl that's already in there. The rest of this is way too hard, and we're never going to get it done. So we're just going to fucking stick with this, just like it is right now. So throw away all of the shadows, and you're just going to end up with the girl in the background. That's all we've got. Is everybody this far? Okay. No? Okay. We're going to make the girl a smart object just because I don't want to screw with it anymore. I've already lost enough of it. So select the girl at the very top, come up to the layer menu, down to smart objects and convert to smart object. And now this won't let me convert it to a smart object, probably because this thing is in 16-bit. Oh, no, it's because it's locked. It's locked. So click on the little lock next to it and then come up to layer, down to smart object and convert to smart object. Woo. Okay, so my first move is actually to process the background correctly. You are the laziest fucking people in the world when it comes to this shit. Nobody white balances, nobody checks their exposure, nobody does any of that work. It's all automated. You couldn't be easier. So double click on the smart object background. It will open it up. Again, it is a raw file. If you zoom into the area where all of the shit is on that wall, you can see that there's a spot on there that has been painted white. I don't trust this gray to be a neutral gray, but that is fucking white paint covering up graffiti. So that's what I'm going to white balance on. Click on your white balance tool, come over here, and simply click on it. And you can see it brings a warmth into this. The girl is color balanced. I've got to color balance my background. They need to be the same neutral. Now, once they are, and I get them put together, I can make everything warmer or everything cooler. But you guys are trying to put images that are too blue and images that are too warm and expect that somehow to work, and then feel like you got to go fix it again afterwards. Don't do that. The next thing I'm going to do is simply click on the auto button at the very top. It actually brings more contrast into this, and it resets my highlight point and my shadow point on this correctly. So now I've got something that I can actually balance. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay to that. And then if you want to take a look at the difference, just do Command J, go back and forth. This is a full color processed image that has been white balanced. And it took us what? 30 seconds? All right, so then the girl. I'm going to zoom in here and do the same trick. I do have an actual guideline in here. I'm going to get rid of the guideline, up to the view menu, down to guides, down to clear guides. Now I need to know if she is scaled right as well. So right now I'm going to click on the girl, I'm going to hit the V key to get the move tool, and I'm going to put her back so that her feet are right next to that wall of bricks that is in the back. Then I'm going to go out to my browser. Everybody do this with me. I have got, no, what?
Were you going to search up the brick size?
Yes. What is the standard height of a brick in the USA? And it's going to come back and say it's 2¼ inches. So if we then go back to our image and look at our image right here, this space of the brick is 2¼ inches. However, there is a 1/2 inch of mortar between the bricks. So the total height of that is going to be 2 3/4. Does that make sense to everyone? So again, if we zoom into this distance right here, from this spot right here, the bottom of one brick, to the top of the mortar of the other brick, that should be 2 3/4 inches. I'm going to make this even simpler than the cross multiplying one. If you then go in and take the girl who was 73 inches tall, and you divide that by 2 3/4, you get 26½ rows of bricks is how tall she should be. So then we simply count them out. I'm going to zoom back out here again. I'm going to turn her off so that I can see the rows of brick easier. I'm going to start, and I'm actually going to do it using a guideline, just so that if I have to move something, I don't lose count. So on my guideline right here, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26½ That's how tall the girl should be. Turn the girl back on, and you can see she's gigantic. She's 15 feet tall. Sorry, guys, but this is the shit. I keep talking about scale, perspective, all of that, whatever. This is how you do it. You find known heights, you compare them to that. The same trick that we did with the guy in the subway door. All of that shit, trying to scale things correctly. So that's what we're going to try to do right here, is try to scale this thing correctly. So this is how tall she should actually be. Again, I'm going, yes? I don't know how tall the garage door is. Those things can be, again, a residential garage door. You can find that out. But this is industrial. They can be double height.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering with her.
That's why I'm using bricks instead of doors. The brick is standard. That I know. So again, I'm going to transform the girl. Command T. Again, put the anchor right down here at the bottom of her feet. The anchor then, I can scale in perspective. So again, I'm going to click on the link between the width and height, and I'm just going to shrink her down till she is actually the height that she should be relative to this. And
Hair, right?
yeah, it's not the hair, it's the top of her head. And Command H will temporarily hide your guideline. So she is scaled correctly now. However, if we go back, and so I'm going to do a snapshot of what this looks like right now, just in case. So I'm going to click on this and say, okay. If we go back to Sierra's original version of this, she was off of this. She wasn't all the way back against that wall. That's fine. I can scale in that. So I'm going to mark where she really is. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to pull down a guideline right here. And then I'm going to drag across and put another guideline. So this cross point right down here is where her feet should actually be. That's how far away she is from that background. So then with those guides out, I'm not going to be able to keep those guides out and go back to my image. Shit. When I go back to my snapshot right here, that's all going to go away. However, if you go back to it and take a look, you can sort of see where this part was right here. So it's coming right off the edge of that, a little bit higher than where that guy was. And I can see the edge of the garage next to her foot. So I can get really close to this. So I'm going to go back to my snapshot. We have got to do this, scale this now in perspective. So to do that, click on the Command T to bring up your transform dialog box. We don't really know where the horizon line of this image is or the horizon line of her. So I'm going to leave her where, I'm going to just leave this where it is. It's as good a guess as any. I'm going to hold down my Shift key and my Option key and then click and pull this lower corner forward until she's on the mark right about where she was before. And then she's scaled right now. She's the correct height, but she's not in the right spot. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that. And then the V key to get the move tool and slide her a little bit over to the left so that, again, I see just that little edge in the back. I'm going to do another snapshot of this now to see what this looks like with the original. So I'm going to click on this and say OK, and then go back up to Sierra's original. And so you aren't really that far off. You were probably, I don't know, 4 inches, 5 inches too tall. It was close. Okay, so this is where I'm going to begin all of this part. But now the part that didn't happen in here, again, I don't know if you ran your check layers, but that's what we're going to do right now. So with this image like this, I am going to run my check layers. So go to your Actions palette, click on check layers, and run them. It will put on, again, all the layers that we're trying to figure out in here. So it starts out with the color check layers on. I'm going to temporarily turn those off. And then I'm going to come down and click on my luminosity check layer. It turns it into a black and white. And then I'm going to zip in here and take a look at this. And when I look at this, two things that I'm feeling here. Number one, I think the shadows on the side of her face are a little bit too dark. And number two, I think there's a much harder light that's coming in from this background. That little white plaque in the very background has almost completely nuked out. So she, in my opinion, is underexposed here. She is a smart object, so I can use Camera Raw Filter on this, which I'm going to do. So select the body, come up to the filter menu, come down to Camera Raw Filter, and then we can't see this anymore in relationship to the background, so you just have to guess. I'm going to add a half a stop of exposure. This is actually a better way to lighten stuff up than to use a curve. It's better to do it in here. It's more genuine in terms of how it treats what exposure really is. So then I'm going to back out of this. And again, I'm not opening up my shadows first. I'm actually just looking at this and saying, okay, do I feel like that's better? If you click on the smart filter and then invert it, you can go back and forth. And I do think it looks considerably better, but frankly, I think it's still it's a little bit too hot. So I'm going to go open up my Camera Raw filter again, and instead of adding a full stop, I'm going to add a third of a stop. I'm going to drop it down to a 0.3, and that feels actually much better to me.
How'd you open the filter again?
Just double click on it. Just double click on the Camera Raw filter. Got it?
Yeah.
Okay. And bring it back. Okay, so this part's working out pretty well for me right now, but what's not working out well for me is the shadow that's on this side of her face. If you take a look at your scene right here, there's this gigantic, broad hunk of concrete right there that is a giant fill light. These shadows are too dark. They would not be that dark, so I need to open them up. So still working on the girl, we're going to add another smart filter, which is unfortunately, it's not in the filter stack, but it's at the image menu, down to adjustments, down to shadows and highlights. So again, to properly open up shadows, you want to use this filter. You don't want to use a curve. So up to the image menu, down to adjustment, shadows and highlights. And when that actually comes on, automatically it opens up the shadows at a 35%. So again, you can use your preview check mark on and off, and I don't see any of that happening. Try that again. There we go. Okay. looking at this, I think this has now opened it up too much. The default when this comes open is it leaves your highlights alone and just opens up your shadows by 35%. I think that's too strong. So I'm going to start to back this off. I'm just going to continue to drop it down till it more feels like what I think it probably should. So I'm down around probably a 20%, feels right to me. Use your preview check mark to turn this on and off. And that feels more like what it would look like in that space. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that. And then I'm going to actually turn my luminosity check layer off. And then just look at my scene right here. I can use, again, to invert my smart filters, the mask for it, just to turn everything on and off. And she feels more legitimate in this space. Again, there's still a color problem in here, and there's a saturation problem in here. But at least she seems more believable in this space to me right now. So my next move is to go after the color. So I'm going to go up to the color check layers and turn them on. And when I look at this, I see, again, her outfit, the dress is so yellow and saturated yellow. I'm not really going to compete with that, but I think she's got too much red in her face. If you take a look at the area down in here, there's these areas down here don't have that same intense red that she has in hers. So I'm going to back some of the red off. To do that, make sure that you select the girl. So this is where we're going to start. We're going to add an adjustment layer to this. Click on the circle at the bottom, the half black and half white. We are going to add a color balance to this. And in the color balance, again, you need to change the blending mode from normal down to color so that it only changes the color. You also need to clip this to the image. So you hover between the composite body layer and the color balance layer. Hold down your option key. You'll get the little icon that's the square of marching ants and an arrow that points down. Click on it. Now when you actually make adjustments, it only impacts the girl. It doesn't impact the entire image. And I said I need to remove some of the red. So up in the red cyan slider, I'm going to click and push this towards the cyan. And the whole time, I'm just watching what this does to her face. Her face went from completely orange to actually pulling in a little bit of, it's gotten rid of the red part and it's becoming more orange itself. So then I'm going to turn off my color check layers and see what I think about this. And come down and turn this color on and off. And she definitely now is fitting more in this space. Look how fucking red she is in there, and the rest of my image is not. But when I take that part off, she perfectly fits into here. And then finally, I'm actually going to do my saturation check layer. And in the saturation check layer, you can see I need her saturation of her skin. I'm never going to desaturate that dress completely because it's primary fucking yellow. But if you take a look in the background, there's parts of the background. There's a big yellow column here in the background that's also primary yellow. But I think her skin tone is actually a little bit too saturated here based on the surrounding area of all of this. So again, I'm now going to click on my color balance layer because I want to add a saturation curve above it, but still clip it to the girl. So I'm going to click on the add adjustment layer. We are going to add a hue and saturation. And then I am going to I want to leave her skirt where it is. So I'm just going to use the targeting adjustment tool to click on her skin. And then I'm just going to drop the saturation. And hopefully, again, this is not clipped. Make sure that you clip it to the body. Hold down your option key. Also make sure that you've changed its blending mode to saturation, so that's all you're changing. And then you can see this is where I was at normal. This is where we started. And I'm just going to pop this down a little bit. It's just knocking it a little bit off of her skin. And then I'm going to turn off my saturation check layer. And then I'm also going to use that guy on and off. Yeah, it's subtle, but it's there. So this is the basic where I'm going to actually start with my image now set up like this. Now, we have 5 minutes to add shadows to this, which is never going to happen, but I will show you because I've completed this myself. But if we do a snapshot in history of this right now, click on this to do a snapshot. It's the third one in the group. and then go back up, and you can click on what Sierra turned in the very beginning and where we are right now. So if you want to see this completely finished, you guys think I just enjoy my time at home and don't do anything. I actually, if you believe it or not, do the majority of these composites again. Here, I know what to do. So this is the difference. This is where I start. Well, this is the difference. This is where it started, and this is where it landed, including the perfect shadow that matches the same perfect color in the same direction as the shadow, the fall off of shadow, the blur of the shadow, the whole 9 yards. Questions about this?
How did you do the shot, like, cause I know for under the 8 we
This was the same figure that we used for the complex shadow last week, and I do the shadow the exact same way, except it's not compound. There's not another wall, but it goes right to the side. This is what it looks like by itself. Oh, actually, it's back in my image. So basically the shadow it's a compound one. So it starts out like this. This is exactly how we made the shadow before, but you can take the shadow curve here, put it inside of a group so that you can add another mask. This is now nested masking.
This is being recorded still, right?
It is being recorded. But what you'll see on this mask here is, again, this is the, if we just take a look at the mask, sorry, this is what I use to actually control the result. So without this mask right here, it's the full shadow. It's just this full shadow. This is the mask that's controlling that full shadow, right? But if I try to actually mask this again, there's no way to do that. I can't, if I go in and I'll change this mask. I don't want to change this one because it's correct. It's the body shape. But if you create a group and put this inside of the group, then I can add a mask to the group. This now allows me to control, I can paint on it. I still keep the original shape of that curve. But this way I can hide part of it because, again, that's how shadows work. They fade as they go away. So this is a natural fade for it. Make sense? Okay. That's it, guys. I will see you guys next week. Again, your only homework from this point on is your final project. So please work on your final project and bring something next week to talk about.